to play. Last thing, this is all on the record. You're in Chatham House, but it's all on the record today. Please feel free to share your comments, your photos via Twitter if you want, by hashtag Chatham House Prize or CH Prize. But please make sure your phones are on silent. And Chatham House staff are dotted, I was going to say around the sides, but this is not all Chatham House staff around the sides. This is definitely a lot of our guests as well, but if you need them at all, they're all here. So let me now introduce, before she comes up and before a little film, but I do want to say a word of introduction to Karen Sack, who, as I said, is President and CEO of Ocean Unite. She'll be moderating our panel. Ocean Unite was founded in 2015 to unify and mobilize influential voices at key moments that matter to drive ocean conservation. She's based in Washington, D.C., just flew over, but she has 20 years' experience on international environmental organizations and questions. She was formerly the Senior Director for International Oceans at the Pew Charitable Trust, which, as many of you here will know, has played a really central role in raising awareness about the challenges to the world's oceans, and she initiated, in fact, the Global Ocean Commission during her time there. Before that, she was head of Greenpeace's International Political Business Unit, and also their International Oceans Campaign. But in any case, before she comes on stage, please stay where you are. We do have a quick film that's going to set things up, and then, Karen, you will come up and take things from here. So welcome all, but please keep quiet. Let's enjoy the film.
A pod of short-finned pilot whales. They live together in what are perhaps the most closely knit of families in the whole ocean. Today, in the Atlantic waters of Europe, as elsewhere, they have to share the ocean with plastic. A mother is holding her newborn young. It's dead. She is reluctant to let it go and has been carrying it around for many days. In top predators like these, industrial chemicals can build up to lethal levels. And plastic could be part of the problem. As plastic breaks down, it combines with these other pollutants that are consumed by vast numbers of marine creatures. It's possible her calf may have been poisoned by her own contaminated milk. Pilot whales have big brains. They can certainly experience emotions. Judging from the behavior of the adults, the loss of the infant has affected the entire family. Unless the flow of plastics and industrial pollution into the world's oceans is reduced, marine life will be poisoned by them for many centuries to come.
Julian, and welcome everyone. It's that piece just takes your breath away. It is so emblematic of everything that is going on in the ocean, and I think that just embodies exactly why Blue Planet 2 is winning this award, because it certainly brought home the critical issues of ocean life and the amazing life that's out there, but also what's impacting everyone. So we are going to have a conversation this evening. We're going to start with a few questions amongst the panel, and then we're going to open up to the floor, so prepare. We're looking forward to a lot of engagement. I'd also like to welcome everyone who is watching online tonight, and hope that you will enjoy this evening as much as we are. I'm going to briefly introduce our panelists, who are just, there's so much to say about them that that's, I think, probably my most difficult task. And then we're going to jump straight into some questions. So first, we have Julian Hector here. He is the head of the BBC Natural History Unit. He's been leading it for 25 years with 300 staff, creating some of the best-in-class television on nature around the world for BBC channels. And under his leadership, this list is just amazing. I had to cut it down too, but I've written some notes. So Julian has led the development of Planet Earth 2, Blue Planet 2, Dynasties, Springwatch, Blue Planet Live, and 7 Worlds, 1 Planet, which I understand is airing here, although we have yet to see it in the US. And then my personal favorite, Animals with Cameras, which is just amazing. So it's wonderful to have you with us. We've also incredibly privileged to have Mark Brownlow, who was the executive producer and series producer of Blue Planet 2, which has to be the best job in the world. He is, maybe not, you can tell us later. He's a multiple Emmy and BAFTA award-winning BBC producer, and is currently the executive producer of Frozen Planet 2 and Earth's Tropical Islands, which is focusing on Madagascar, Borneo, and Hawaii. In Blue Planet 2, he helped bring breaking and cutting-edge technology so that we could all enjoy an entirely new understanding of life below the waves. Blue Planet 2, for folks who don't know the statistics, was the most watched television program in 2017. It was seen by 250,000 viewers in China alone, which is great, and is credited with changing public opinion on ocean plastic, which we are going to discuss a little bit tonight. And Mark also has produced the 3D giant screen Oceans, Our Blue Planet, which is now, it's been released worldwide, and anyone who enjoyed Blue Planet 2, if you really want to feel that you are part of the Blue Planet series, go and watch that. It is unbelievable. You literally get to swim with dolphins. It is fabulous. And finally, someone who needs absolutely no introduction whatsoever is joining us is Sir David Attenborough, master storyteller, natural historian, who has been bringing the most incredible creatures into our living rooms for 7 decades, and hopefully will continue. The first program that Sir David developed was were watched by about 10,000 people, and Our Planet, by comparison, was watched by 33 million people within the first month of its release. So that's incredible. And last year, YouGov.poll voted you the most popular person in Britain. I think the audience has just underscored that. So welcome, all of you. And we're going to kick off immediately with some questions. And Julian, I hope you don't mind, I'm going to start with you. You sitting at the heart of the Natural History Unit, tell us what it's like running the unit and its people and character, and also a little bit about what Blue Planet 2 has meant to the unit.
Oh, the Natural History Unit is a team of men and women, you know, who are so driven to get you close to the natural world. I mean, one of the things that conjoins everybody in my unit is their desire to give the audience the close-up, because they too are absolutely passionate about that as well. And I think something that that they all believe, and I believe, and it's very cohesive for us all, is the natural world belongs to everybody, absolutely everybody, and therefore it's pan-cultural. It keeps us alive. It informs our humanity. It inspires us in art and writing and everything. And that wider value of the natural world, you know, drives the men and women in the Natural History Unit to document the most amazing things. Something that caricatures us is not just the close-up. It's more like a sort of metaphor, really, getting close to the story. But we like to film new things, new animal behaviour. So the Natural History Unit is aligned very closely to scientists and people who can get us close to the natural world all over the world. And so we're quite a sort of learned group. But at the end of the day, you know, we're dirt under the fingernails, grubby program makers, and they don't normally look like this, actually. So I think it's and just referencing all the students at the back there, is that I mean, I'll say it now, that you know, that being a wildlife filmmaker, making content in any role in making this content, not just for television but for all the other platforms, you know, is open to everyone. So as the young people at the back of the room there, I want you all to know that if you're interested in the natural world, if you aspire to telling stories about nature, then it's a career open to absolutely everybody in different roles. So that's open to all of you, so you're very welcome.
Thank you. Well, the Blue Planet 2, one of the most impacted audience segments was 16 to 24-year-olds.
Yeah.
So.
Well, Blue Planet 2 has had enormous impact, and we were just saying before joining you all what a long tail it's had, and this will come up in the conversation, I'm sure. Had a huge impact when it went out. There was lots of digital activity around it as well, and it really struck a chord. And striking a chord. What strikes a chord? What strikes a chord is the way in which the stories are told. Not just the photography. The photography is amazing, and Mark will be talking a lot about that. But the extraordinary sort of immersive, emotional storytelling, where by going through it, you kind of understand the intentions, if you like, the plans of the animals. And I think Blue Planet 2, and it's really difficult. I mean, the number of times that we've tried actually to sell underwatery shows to controllers, and they sort of say things like, well, won't it just be full of fish? And it sort of is, yes, but these are amazing, wonderful, sophisticated animals, and anything else that lives under the sea. And Blue Planet 2 really liberated that. Of course, with the amazing worlds of the global storyteller, the master himself, Sir David, of course.
Thank you. It was so interesting, I think, in Blue Planet 2, as you watch species collaboration, you see fish using tools. It certainly opened up those worlds. And so, Mark, you know, this was a program that was the 4th most popular television program in the UK. Did you ever imagine that it would have so much impact?
Not at all. We were biting our nails when it went out on air. We had no idea how the audience would respond. I mean, our ambition was always to take the audience on a magical journey to new worlds, meet never-seen-before creatures, and witness groundbreaking behaviours. But for many people, the oceans are alien worlds, out of sight, out of mind. as Julian referenced, filled with cold-blooded, slippery fish. So our challenge was to make people fall in love with the oceans. And what we wanted to do was just reveal how intelligent, sophisticated marine creatures truly are. I mean, for instance, who would have thought that fish change sex, octopus decorate themselves against shark attack by adorning themselves in a body armor of shells, and a tutfish uses a tool to crack open its clam, as David will confirm. Tool use is something that you typically associate with primates in terms of intelligent behaviors. And the other thing we wanted to do was tell emotionally charged, character-driven stories that the audiences would really emote with, identify with. And like a mother walrus tending to a struggling pup in a world of diminishing ice. And what we felt is if we could make people fall in love with the characters of the ocean, then when we told the devastating truths around the environmental threats that they face, they would care.
It's so interesting that, because if you know, when you speak with someone like Sylvia Earle, who's probably spent more time beneath the waves than anyone else, she talks about the personalities of the fish and the species that she meets, that it's not just a school of fish, but that each one has a personality with the different traits, and that was certainly picked up. And I think one of the other interesting pieces is how much collaboration there was with the scientific community. We see that in the final episode, and it would be interesting to know some of the impact. We talk about the impact of the series on all of us and our changing habits. What was the collaboration like with science and some of the impact and outcomes since then?
I mean, we simply could not have made the series without help from a global network of scientists. I mean, Blue Planet 2 ended up being far more than just a piece of entertainment. It furthered our scientific understanding of marine life. And we worked hand in hand with scientists all along the way. They offered us their expertise, and we offered them unprecedented access into the far reaches of our ocean. And together we discovered that devil rays in the open ocean actively hunt land and fish. We discovered that on coral reefs, clownfish bring home objects to their home anemones to lay their eggs on. And even in the deep, bacteria that's farmed by yeti crabs is stolen by deep sea shrimp. I mean, so it was a wonderful collaboration. Passion.
I know, it's a good job, this ocean gig. So David, I got to binge watch the entire series this week, which was a hardship. You've got to love a job that gives you the opportunity to do that. And read a lot about the impact that Blue Planet 2 has had on so many people, changing their behavior. What was the impact on you of the series? How did it kind of impact on you and affect you looking forward?
Well, it's a new world, you see. I'm not an expert underwater swimmer, but I started underwater swimming in the 1950s. And I remember, like it was yesterday, the first time I put on a mask and went below the sea. The first thing that feels you, I mean, you obviously had to be trained and skilled to do it, but the thrill of actually moving in 3 dimensions at will, instead of being fixed to the ground as we are most of the time, is in itself astonishment. But if that dive is on something like the Barrier Reef or something, you suddenly see 100 creatures of infinite beauty, of all the colours of the rainbow, doing things you can't imagine what they're doing and understanding, and totally unafraid of you, and you can move among them, and it is moving into another universe. And that, even if you haven't swum underwater, that series captured that feeling. I watched it. My role is at the words, and so again and again I had the privilege of seeing the first put together of a program, And I watched with just the same astonishment as anyone else here would watch at the brilliance of the underwater swimmers. Because although it's a different world, it's not easy. I mean, it really is not easy to work in it. And the cameramen who do that work, and he's one of them, I mean, he's an underwater director who tells cameramen what to do underwater. Think of that. They are a different. They're a different tribe. They're a different tribe.
It's astonishing, really. And Mark, I guess the step change in the series was really the beginning focus on the impact that humans are having on the ocean, whether it's pollution, the loss of coral reefs, overfishing. And the impact, as we look around the world, here in the UK, new legislation, in the EU, new legislation on plastics, and in many other places. Did you think that that would be the impactful edge of Blue Planet 2? Was it something that you were expecting? Was it unexpected? And how have you seen that evolve?
Well, over the course of making the series, we witnessed two of the greatest coral bleaching events on Australia's Great Barrier Reef, and we swam through oceans of plastic, and we felt increasingly compelled to tell a contemporary portrait of today's oceans. And across the series, we tackled all the major environmental threats that the oceans face, from overfishing to ocean acidification. But absolutely, it was the issue of ocean plastics that really hit home the hardest. And we wonder why. I mean, it could be perhaps the very kind of tragic imagery of a drowning turtle entangled in a fishing net. It could have been, the tragic story of a mother albatross innocently feeding her chick plastic. But I think more than anything, it's because the issue around ocean plastics, I think people feel empowered to do something about it. I mean, we can all change our behavioural habits around how much single-use plastic we use and make a tangible difference with that. So I think that's probably why.
It's, well, certainly as somebody who visits the UK quite frequently, it's been fascinating to see the change that's happened here. Hopefully in the US we'll see some of the changes happening too in the near future. But as you say, there are so many key issues impacting the ocean. Hopefully the plastic issue is the gateway, but we see this step change happening now in terms of the biggest pollutant in the ocean is CO2. And that's something we need to address very seriously. So this is the depressing part of the conversation, giving you a health warning. And I think as we're looking at these nature programs, and Julian, the natural programming, are you seeing a change as you move forward in terms of the work that the Natural History Unit is going to be doing? Kind of give us a sense of what's in the pipeline and how some of the crises impacting the environment now are influencing the development of some of that programming.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, Blue Planet 2, which we've been talking about, is a really good example of a highly invested in landmark, as we call them, mega landmark, which reaches millions, where the modern world and how it impacts on animal and plant life histories is, we're telling those stories. If any of you are seeing 7 Worlds, 1 Planet, which is broadcasting on BBC One at the moment, you've probably noticed that we are strengthening even more the way in which the pressures on our world are impacting the natural world. And although we talk a lot about climate change, I mean, you might have seen in the Antarctic episode the impacts that strengthening winds in the South Atlantic are having on, in the story we told, albatross reproduction. But we're also talking about deforestation, for example. I mean, it was quite striking, looking at audience reaction, how quite hardened people were really surprised at the time-lapse images we were showing of the rate of deforestation in parts of Asia. And likewise, you know, we're talking about introduced species. So there are, in terms of sort of health warning, there are a number of sort of environmental factors that are sort of impacting the natural world. So many of them are a result, obviously, that we're now a populated Earth, and we have to find a way to share the planet, you know, with the natural world that supports us. And thinking of pipelines, you know, we will always be talking now about conservation and the natural world. What I feel very strongly about, though, and Mark, and I know Sir David does too, is that we have to tell these stories. Well, we know that emotional engagement in these stories reaches audiences, is memorable to audiences. And so, however tough these conservation stories are, if we can tell them through the life histories of animals and plants, and we can connect people so you can see how these environmental factors are affecting life on Earth, then they're memorable, and then we can see positive change. So conservation, I mean, you in lining Mark up for this interview, talking about Frozen Planet 2, I mean, Frozen Planet 2 is about the frozen worlds, obviously, not just the polar regions, but this is one of the fastest changing parts of the Earth, and we're documenting that. So there'll be more of this. But the natural world is resplendent and joyous, and as I said at the beginning, it informs our humanity as well. So we must never forget just what else the natural world does for us. Its heritage value, as well as keeping us alive.
And there's some amazing BBC research which shows that actually watching nature documentaries makes us happy. And it is a joyful experience, and actually, because we're connecting with nature, we can cope better with modern life. Ideally, we then get out into nature and we enjoy it, not just on a screen. But I think that also speaks to, and so David, maybe you can help answer this question a little bit, is the final episode of Blue Planet 2 was very people-centered. It was about some of the heroes who are working around the world to protect the ocean, but it was also about the impacts that our activities are having. Was that planned? Was it something that you'd thought through before?
Oh yes, I mean, it was planned by the team, Mark and the team, leading the team. It was part of it, and in fact, you know, we've actually been saying this on almost every series I've done for the past 20 years. The strange thing about the polluting of the ocean is that we've been talking about plastic actually for a long time. But in the mass media business, it's very mysterious as to when you make an impact and when you don't. And there are an awful lot of advertising agencies who would like to know and be able to predict that sort of effect. But we can't. All we can do is to go on about it. And we have been going on about pollution, particularly plastic pollution, in the seas for a long time. With Blue Planet 1, I'm sure, mentioned it too. And one has done. So you can only go, but suddenly, whatever it was, whatever else was going on in the society around it, the way the effect that one program had amazed us all.
It's truly incredible, and I'm going to turn it over to the audience for some questions. Some of the research, again, that's been done points to the fact that when we go to the beach and we put our feet in the sand and we wiggle our toes around and hit a piece of plastic, that brings it home to us. We can see it, we can feel it, versus most of us don't get to go in the water and see a coral reef. And when we do, it looks amazing, and there are fish on the reef. And so we don't understand that. And
communications and other services our societies rely on, such as air travel, weather forecast, or banking. Space is also essential to the alliance's deterrence and defense. including the ability to navigate, to gather intelligence, and to detect missile launches. Around 2,000 2,000 satellites currently orbit the Earth, and around half of them are owned by NATO countries. NATO has no intention to put weapons in space. We are a defensive alliance, and our approach will remain fully in line with international law. But making space an operational domain will help us ensure that all aspects are taken into account to ensure the success of our missions. For instance, this can allow NATO planners to make requests for allies to provide capabilities and services, such as hours of satellite communications or data for imagery. Ministers also agreed recommendations to consolidate NATO's role in energy security, as this plays an important role in our common security. The recommendations aim to improve situational awareness and understand the risks, protect critical infrastructure and enhance alliance resilience, and enable NATO forces to have the necessary energy resources at all times. Ministers also reviewed the implementation of the package of measures on the Black Sea security that we adopted in April. This includes the training of maritime forces and coast guards, port visits and exercises, and sharing information. The recent visit of the North Atlantic Council to both Georgia and Ukraine were a good opportunity to see this package in action. NATO's standing naval groups have been exercising with Georgia and Ukrainian ships, improving our ability to work together. And allies also continue regular patrols and NATO air policing in the Black Sea region. At the same time, we welcome that Russia has finally returned the Ukrainian vessels it seized last November. This is what the International Tribunal on the Law of the Sea had requested. And it is a step in the right direction ahead of the Normandy Format Summit next month. Ministers also endorsed the updated action plan on enhancing NATO's role in the fight against terrorism. This includes sharing more intelligence on significant terrorist activities, including attacks in our countries and foreign fighters. NATO continues to play a key role in the fight against terrorism through our training missions in Iraq and in Afghanistan, and through our surveillance flights in support of the global coalition to defeat ISIS. Finally, ministers adopted a policy that sets the standards in the prevention and response to sexual exploitation and abuse. This brings together best practices into one overarching framework, applies to all NATO personnel, and underlines our zero-tolerance approach. It is another practical way in which we show our commitment to our principles and core values, including the respect for human rights. Today, we also addressed our progress in the three areas of burden sharing: cash, capabilities, and contributions. This is the fifth consecutive year of rising defence spending across European allies and Canada, with over 100 billion added to their defence budgets by the end of next year. The trend is up, it is unprecedented, and we are determined to do more. Tonight, ministers will discuss our coordinated approach to three strategic issues: Russia, China, and arms control. NATO is the only platform where Europe and North America engage every day on such strategic issues which matter to our shared security. As we look to the leaders' meeting next month, Europe and North America are doing more together than for many years. We are stepping up across the board and focus on the future. With that, I'm ready to take your questions.
Okay, we'll start with Reuters, second row. Second row, please. Second row, please. Thank you.
Robin Emmett from Reuters. Secretary General, we understand that today you heard from both Germany and France on two proposals about NATO's future. I wondered which of the proposals you feel has the most merit, and whether you personally would be ready to take on the role as leading some kind of wise group, wise persons group? Thank you.
First of all allies expressed very strong support to NATO and to the importance of transatlantic unity. The proposal from Minister Heiko Maas received support from many allies, and I think it has value, and we will now look into it as we prepare for the upcoming leaders' meeting, and then we will decide what to do.
James, last row there. Over there, and then we'll come back to the gentleman in the front row.
Thank you. Yes, Brooks Senior, James Defense Weekly. I have a question about NATO and Ukraine. With all the efforts that the Allies have done to help Ukraine with its trust funds, that is, strengthen its military, boost cyber defenses, install democratic and transparent control of the military, I wonder if you consider it problematic or not that one ally has tried to use its bilateral military assistance to Ukraine for purely domestic political purpose, something that undermines the alliance's political effort as a whole to help a partner country. Let me rephrase that. I'm not asking you to pass judgment on the single ally's domestic agenda, but whether its actions have had or will have a deleterious effect on the alliance's goals and effectiveness in Ukraine. Thank you.
If I started to respond to that, I will be part of domestic political debate, and that is not something I will do. Because that will only divert attention from what is my main responsibility, and that is to make sure that allies stand united as we continue to provide political and practical support to Ukraine. And we are stepping up, both within the NATO framework, but also NATO allies provide bilateral support. I encourage them to do more of all of that, because we stand in solidarity with Ukraine, and for us it is extremely important to not accept the illegal annexation of Crimea, and to help the Ukrainians to modernize their armed forces, to modernize their defense institutions, and to continue to support them. And again, I will not be part of a domestic discussion in the United States.
We'll go to the front row.
Alexandra Troshnikov, Reform Belarus.
I probably think that that's the first place that you should explore and understand. We have a question over here. Gentleman with his hand up.
Thanks. I'm David Pollock, member and supporter of Chatham House. The clip from Blue Planet 2 that we were shown had two important messages. One was about plastic, the other was about industrial pollutants. And obviously you've had the most extraordinary positive impact in relation to how government, society and companies are now thinking about plastic. To what extent do you think they're taking up and taking action on the other message about industrial pollutants into the oceans?
Oh, I like they all looked at me, but no.
I can have a go.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, this is, you know, every era is something I'll talk about. Every era has a story, has its story to tell, and I think we're very much in the era of the big story. And you know, the big story is the complexity of this environmental crisis, and I think audiences, and taking an audience perspective of it, I am seeing enormous recognition day in, day out on social media platforms, particularly not linked necessarily to things that we're doing, but of recognition of big change. And so I absolutely think that big change is being recognised by the audience, by the population, and I think good things will follow.
Did you want to add anything, Mark?
Industrial contamination, I mean, it's impacting our very own killer whales off the Isles of Shetland. That there's research saying that they're now infertile. So it's not just in far-flung oceans, it's also around our very own shorelines. So yes, I mean, it's a big issue.
Want to add anything? No. I think it's a really important issue, and there are actually international treaties in place. There's a treaty on marine pollution, which is supposed to deal with the impacts of industrial pollutants on the ocean. Part of the challenge is, and this has been one of the challenges in the ocean space writ large, is it's out of sight and out of mind. So if you are somewhere out in the middle of the ocean and you put out some bilge water, no one is paying attention, even though you're not supposed to. And oftentimes when we look at some of the big rivers that are flowing down to the sea and the impacts of not just industrial pollutants, but also pollutants from agriculture and industrial agriculture, and that is something that most countries are not looking at, and it's really important as we're seeing some of the dead zones evolve in these coastal areas and the impacts, particularly in those areas that are so important as nursery grounds, as carbon storage hubs as well, mangroves, seagrass beds, really important natural habitats that are also key to, they're key kind of buffers from major storm events and help build resilience to change. So perhaps that's a challenge out to Chatham House and its members, that we really need to start looking at some of these issues in a holistic way. The way the ocean is governed is in many silos. So if you catch tuna, you go to one organization. If you are involved with shipping, it's a different organization. If it's deep seabed mining, it's something else entirely. And if you actually want to protect biodiversity, there's no agreement in place on that globally, which is in the works for this next year. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done on breaking down those silos and bringing in some strong ocean governance. There's a question here in the front. Some beautiful, I think, cowrie shells. No.
Beads, but they could easily be. But no, it's a good guess. Hilda Rapp, members Chatham House and Centre for International Peacebuilding. Just to say first off that I am a total addict of your programs. I've watched most of them, and so much so that I've actually spent over 100,000 miles at sea myself, looking underwater and above water at what you've been talking about. And one thing that I was wondering about is whether you have thought of involving the older storytellers that have been telling your kind of story for many, many centuries. I'm thinking of the Tlingit in Alaska and British Columbia, where this notion of an interconnected world, of the flows and positive and negative feedback loops is absolutely part of everyday life. It's in their art, it's in their culture, it's in how they deal with the natural environment, how they are part of the sea, and the sea is in them, and the animals are their kin. So you've, in a way, recreated a storytelling for the Western world that has its roots, that, as you well know, in traditional cultures everywhere, in the Pacific particularly. And I just wondered whether you've included some of these, storytellers from those kind of cultures in some of your new films.
It's a wonderful question.
It's a wonderful question. I'm trying to find a wonderful answer. I think that there are different dialogues, and the dialogue that we put together on these films, I mean, we could take a mythological attitude, as you say, about Mother Ocean or about the whales of part and be rather mystical about it. But I think the dialogue which we have to take, which is an international dialogue, is the language of behavioral science. And physical science too. There are so many facts that we have to convey, and the key, what makes life easy, is if there is a narrative in which there is a hunter or a hunted, where there is a problem to be solved, and you can do those. You tell those in pictures as far as you can, and then you add explanation in the words. And I think that you should take the one language which is universal, which is scientific logic. I don't know whether you agree.
Well, I do agree. I do agree, of course. These, I mean, what we all need, isn't it, in terms of immersing ourselves and appreciating the value of the natural world, is different perspectives. And so I completely agree with Sir David, but how, we have to embrace these perspectives. If I may say, we did it on radio, and to a British audience. It was a series on Radio 4 called Natural Histories, which is still running. And the premise of that was that you took a species and you looked at how that species was valued, not just through its science, but through its cultural significance and how it's recognised in different cultures. And it worked incredibly well as speech, and it could work very well in pictures.
Hang on a second for the mic. Just.
Thank you very much. No, I mean, what's exciting is that those people themselves have a very detailed scientific knowledge of their environment and those flows that I was talking about. And I was wondering about capturing that. I wasn't so much interested in the mythology. Of course, that is the old-fashioned way of trying to hold on to that knowledge. But it's the practical knowledge of their actual environment that I thought might be what was worth kind of interacting with.
Of course.
So I wasn't trying to kind of divert you from your course.
No, not at all.
In the series that I'm privileged enough to be working on, Frozen Planet 2, our final environmental episode will include the voice of local people and their unique perspective. So absolutely.
Well, perhaps we need to think of a new show which includes some of the traditional Hawaiian or Pacific navigators and their canoes, and so David, you can go on a trip across the Pacific, and some of us can get to join, and we can put the storytellers together. There's a question right at the back of the room. Let's go to the back. I think we've got time for it, and then what we'll do is we'll take that question and maybe two others, and then come back to the panel this will be the final round.
Thank you. Adam Drew from the Times Diary. Question for Sir David. Congratulations on being named the UK's favourite human. You've certainly shown the world the beauties of its breadth, but I was curious to know, what is your favourite living thing in the UK?
Okay, we'll give you a few seconds to think about that. You said a thing, so it could,
You have to take the strongest bond that we have socially is our family. So that has to be my answer.
Okay, so now I'm going to group the final few questions together. We're going to go in the front here to this lady in the press, and then we'll go to the person with the white shirt on in the fourth row from the front. No, just over here. And then the gentleman sitting on the corner, and then I'm afraid we're going to be done.
Question specific. Well, congratulations to all of you. It's just a privilege and a joy to see you here today, to see your work recognized. Talking about the gateway that you have opened up to the world, the international language. I work for France 24, so an international global channel. I'm president of the foreign press. I think you are very gracious, and of course the pictures are essential and how they're edited is essential. But I would say that your inclusive language, not in a politically sense, and your tone, it's never, ever lecturing to people. And I think that's, so as a political animal myself, obviously reporting on world leaders, you are reaching people now that you have never reached before and that you probably never thought you would reach at what is a very local level, regional, international, and very powerful level. Are you honestly, and I know you're deeply honest, I feel that. I think everybody feels that in your approach. It's something that is beyond words, that people know and see that in you. Do you feel that behind closed doors, and it's just as important, if not more than publicly, powerful political leaders in this world are really engaging with you and are prepared to take some steps, real political will, to change things that will be important for the survival of this planet?
Thank you. If you can hold on your answer just for a second. Let's have the other two questions and see how they all fit together. And then we'll come straight to you, Sir David.
Hi, my name is Linda, and I am a mother of two, and I have a slightly less academic question. We went to a holiday in Italy with my family 2 years ago, and we went on to your beach story earlier. We went to the beach on the beautiful coast of Italy to collect shells with my then 5-year-old and our newborn. And the first thing that my daughter said, who was then 5, was instead of looking at shells, she said, "Look, there's plastic. We have to gather all the plastic," because this is a message that the schools are handing over to the children. And we spent probably about 2.5 hours picking up plastic in the coast of Italy, with me slightly feeling very proud, but also slightly horrified that we were actually collecting plastic in a plastic bag that I had with me, because that's all I had. But it was a very proud moment for me, and as a parent, and as sort of a custodian of the world that we're handing off to our children. And I just wonder, for each of you, what has been the proudest moment in your life in terms of the proudest moment of achievement, professionally or personally?
Thank you. And our final question.
Proudest moment in your life?
Hi, Richard Parler. I saw some figures about a couple of months ago which suggested that the trade in the illegal trade in wildlife was approaching something like the world's 4th largest crime, so getting on to a par with global drug trafficking. So I'm interested to hear what the panel have got to say about the best ways we can combat the illegal trade in wildlife and preserve more of the species, whether that ranges from things like flooding the Asian markets with synthetic rhino horn through to catching poachers and so on. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, that didn't work very well from my perspective, because we got 3 incredibly different questions that I was going to try and magically group together, but that is just not going to work. So I think, why don't we start a little bit with the illegal wildlife trade. We've only got a few minutes, so I'm not sure, Julian, if you'd like to speak to that, or Sir David.
It's a very good and an enormous question, and you know, over the, I mean, the Natural History Unit has been in existence for over 60 years, and during that whole time, which Sir David actually has been involved, actually not always with the NHU, but trade in endangered species, you know, has been present. I mean, in some ways, it was the foundation of big charities like Worldwide Fund for Nature, for example, going back to Sir Peter Scott days and things like that. It's enormous, and we're seeing the pressure of that. We have built some of those stories into 7 Worlds, 1 Planet. I mean, ultimately the market just has to not be there for it. And interestingly, a while back, I was involved in the production of a BBC One programme, a panorama special, looking at the ivory trade, and we were tracking the money and the ivory from Africa, where it was poached, to its market as we reported in Panorama in China. And very interestingly, one of the turnarounds there was that the market for ivory, the prices that people could pay for ivory, could be infinite. It could just go up and up and up until there was no ivory. But one of the things that caused a U-turn and things to get a bit better was recognizing, from the Chinese perspective, in the program that we did, the sort of heritage value of elephants in Africa, in this case. And so there is it isn't necessarily just sticks. It is important to change, as we see it from the programs that we make, mines as well.
Just coming back to the world of fish and oceans, if you go out for dinner tonight with 5 people and everyone orders some fish, at least one of you will be eating an illegally caught fish. It's rampant illegal fishing, and it's not only the impact on humans, on the fish and ecosystems, but also the people who are often indentured or enslaved on those fishing vessels. So definitely check before you eat and before you buy some of the seafood to make sure that it has been legally caught, and that you can source it back to where it comes from. The next question we're going to go to is on your proudest moments, and maybe what we can do is start with you, Mark, and then work our way over to Sir David, who can talk about that, and then we can go into the politics and the question that we were asked about, are politicians doing enough, are we doing enough? Mark.
Well, I mean, I've undoubtedly been part of Blue Planet team. It was a massive effort with the core team of 25 people based out of Bristol, along with a fleet of international camera teams, and then a massive post-production team to put it all together. And I have to say, having just working with David, it's been such an honour. Thank you.
Of course. How could anything be second to working with you? We've talked a lot about television, and my tone this afternoon has been about the joy that the natural world can bring, and something that I brought to Radio 4 was Tweet of the Day. Yes. And we weren't allowed to nick 2 minutes from the Today programme. I know. So, but a couple of minutes was nicked from Farming Today to allow it. And it's still running. And it's and don't you think it's wonderful that you've got a little nuance of natural history just before the day's huge news agenda begins? And Tweet of the Day.
So, David.
What was the question?
The question was, what is one of your proud moments?
Oh, yes. Well, the moment I'm not allowed to forget, and I'm not in danger of forgetting, because it's imprinted on my mind, is nothing to do with ambition. It was entirely accidental. Somebody else took the decision, and that somebody was a gorilla. I was out making a film about gorillas, which had been habituated by Diane Fossey, a marvelous American biologist who had habituated these animals, so they weren't afraid of human beings. And I was going to make a scientific point about something or other, and I was talking about it like lying, thinking that gorillas were far behind me, and I suddenly felt an enormous great thump on my head, and it was a female gorilla that had just come out of the bush there, who was interested in my teeth. And she turned my head around and she put this huge, great, big black thing and put my mouth open. And my eyes, I suppose that's and it's difficult to smile under those circumstances. And then she relaxed and I relaxed. And while I was wondering what would happen next, there was a waiter on my feet, and her 2 babies, who were about 3 or 4 years old, were sitting on my shoes, undoing the shoelaces. And the camera team was way back there, waiting for me to say something scientific. That's the moment I won't forget.
What did you say?
Oh.
That's wonderful. And I guess turning to the final question, which is, I guess, actually thinking about some of those gorillas and what they're going through at the moment, and thinking about the climate crisis, the biodiversity crisis, and what's going on in the oceans. Are our politicians doing enough? Are we doing enough? And what should we be doing?
We could never do enough. Just to deal with the gorillas for the minute, however, there are now twice as many mountain gorillas than there were when I shot that film. you can do things about it. We can never do enough because we have overrun the world. There are 3 times more human beings on the earth than when I started making natural history programs. And they all require space to live, just like the rest of us. And they all require food. They all require a lot of things, make demands on the planet. The problems are just piling up. We can never do enough. We have still got a lot of people to convince in this world. There are at least two, if not 3, large nations in the world that still don't accept that we are ruining the world. They will not accept that. And they have the rights to their own country. We are not dictators. We can't force it upon them. But the fact is that what those are happening are catastrophic, and are putting back our efforts. But we cannot despair. I am sure we will bring them round eventually, but it's going to take time. And meanwhile, we must do our best.
Well, thank you so much. I think I can't think of a better way to close this evening as we just prepare for the presentation. So thank you to all of you for some excellent questions. I'm sure there are lots more out there. And thank you so much, Sir David and Julian and Mark. All of our lives are so much richer for what you have brought to all of us and people around the world. Thank you very much. And we are going to step down. There will be a little bit of a shift on the stage, and then we'll have the presentation of the award. Thank you.
and the BBC Studios Natural History Unit. It's now my great pleasure to invite our patron, Her Majesty the Queen, to present the prize to Sir David and Dr. Julian Hector. Your Majesty.
As patron of the Royal Institute of International Affairs, I'm delighted that members have awarded this year's Chatham House Prize to Sir David Attenborough and the Blue Planet Tube team. Sir David, this award recognises your many talents, and one can't help but feel that for those of us of a certain generation, we can take great pleasure in proving age is no barrier to being a positive influence. Your ability to communicate the beauty and vulnerability of our natural environment remains unequalled, as you and your team have engaged and enthused many people, young and old, to appreciate and preserve our world's oceans. For that, we should all be thankful. I congratulate you and all involved in this endeavour. Here is your prize.
Your Majesty, members and guests of Chatham House, and students, of course, it's an absolute honour to receive this prize on behalf of my entire team at BBC Studios Natural History Unit. The Natural History Unit operates around the world in very small teams, documenting the natural world. And we can only exist with the support of my colleagues in the BBC and BBC Studios and the many scientific collaborators, together with the local people on the ground who give us access to very remote parts of the world. So thank you to all of you. Being head of the Natural History Unit is hands down the best job in the world. I mean, look at me now. We're a specialist unit, quite big, around 350 people, that have been observing and recording the natural world for over 60 years. We tell stories of the natural world and our relationship with it through crafted storytelling for everyone. And plastic has been on my mind for decades. Before becoming a wildlife filmmaker, I spent several years as a field biologist. I worked for the British Antarctic Survey in the early 80s, studying albatrosses on South Georgia in the South Atlantic. There, I helped a fellow biologist to study the food albatrosses fed their chicks. We used to make them vomit in a bucket by gently squeezing them, rather like playing a set of bagpipes.
Your Majesty. Chatham House is a remarkable institution. It was founded between the wars, and it concerned itself exclusively with international problems. Well, international problems have never been more international, more crucial, and more pressing than they are today. International. The atmosphere doesn't have favorites among nations. The ocean washes the shores of the rich nations as well as the poor nations. Trees felled in Amazonia affect the rainfall in Europe. Carbon dioxide belching from the chimneys of China can ultimately affect temperatures worldwide. Melting glaciers in Alaska drown islands and villages in Polynesia. Each of these actions were responsible to national problems. People saw them as a consequence of their own national difficulties, irrespective of what happened to anybody else. Never has there been a greater need for international cooperation and international solutions. They won't be easy to win. Politicians have to look to the people who elect them, who will assume that they will be number one on the list. That cannot remain to be so. We are citizens of the world, and we must recognize that. And international cooperation, which is the subject of this great organization, is of paramount importance. If this international organization considers that what we have done in the Natural History Unit has in some way helped spread an awareness of the problems that face the world, that in some way will convince the population of the world that we all belong to one world, and just the one world belongs to all of us, then this award pleases me more than I can say, and I'm most grateful to receive it. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, as I said at the beginning, may I please ask you all to remain in your seats for a little while, because you will now appreciate the importance of us being able to leave efficiently. But we do have a film which will be shared with you to back up what you saw at the beginning. But thank you very much for joining us. We will now leave. Please remain in your seats.
For years, we thought that the oceans were so vast that nothing we could do could have an effect upon them. But now we know that was wrong. It's now clear that our actions are having a significant impact on the world's oceans. Plastic has become an integral part of our daily lives, but every year some 8 million tons of it ends up in the ocean, and there it can be lethal.
Audiences across the country, glued to Blue Planet 2, have been starkly reminded of the problems of plastics pollution.
The problem was vividly highlighted in the BBC's recent Blue Planet 2 series, which was public service broadcasting at its finest. The Plan for England, which we're publishing today, sets out the action of government.
We are at a unique stage in our history. Never before have we had such an awareness of what we are doing to the planet. And never before have we had the power to do something about that. Surely we have a responsibility to care for our blue planet. The future of humanity, and indeed all life on Earth, now depends on us.